Hey guys, so I figured it was time to do yet another tier list. Today we're going to be ranking horror sequels. Now I do have some parameters as to how I will be ranking these. So one, obviously I have to have seen it. So if I'm not including some, probably have not seen it. Two, I'm not doing entire franchises and all of their sequels. There are some franchises in here, but I only chose the second film in those, so the first sequel of that franchise, because we are not going to be here for a million years. You don't want to watch me rank a million sequels. We're just not doing that. On that note, we are also not doing every horror sequel ever to be in existence because we have to keep it reasonable. So today we're doing 30 horror sequels. They are kind of random, mostly modern. Not sorry. We could do a part 2 if you want. Like if you really enjoy this, we could do a part 2, but I just picked 30 that I've seen and would want to talk about. Number 4, they have to be true sequels, not reboots, not remakes, and not prequels, because there's a lot of those that are disguised as sequels that are actually prequels. We're not doing those. So they have to actually follow true to the story and be an actual like technical sequel. Number 5, I make my own tiers. Obviously, if you've been around here for a while, you know I don't do S tier, A tier. I just find that to be a little bit boring and I want to keep this fun for myself and for you. So I'm going to make my own tiers. They are technically still in order of like top tier to bottom tier. I try to, keep it in that format, but just so you know, if you're new, I make my own tiers. Not a lot of people like it. So, but just, heads up, all my tier lists are like that. Okay, so with all of that out of the way, let's get into ranking these 30 horror sequels. Of course, let's start with the actual tiers. Okay, so here we are in the tier list. This is a standard format, but we're gonna change things around a little bit. So top tier, I'm going to rename 2 originals. So these are ones that are basically as good as the originals, if not better, and could have been the original in the franchise or could have been the first one, and it still would have gotten me hooked on the movies, on the series. Sometimes these are just two and done. These aren't all franchises, of course. Next up, we have solid sequel. Pretty self-explanatory. I love an alliteration, so we're going solid sequel. These are just, the solid ones. They work in the story. I like the evolution of things, and it was a good movie. Next here, we have a choice. It was indeed a choice to make this movie. Not sure if it works as a sequel, but it was something. You did something there with it. Next, we have a category called Why Try? This is the unfair category. Sometimes my tiers are a little unfair to the movies. These are the sequels that shouldn't even bothered, right? Because they're not gonna come close to the originals, or they just wouldn't make sense as sequels anyway, so why would you even bother trying to expand the franchise and make this movie at all? And lastly, it's just another self-explanatory. Just no. No, we're going with no, just the not good ones. These are the worst horror sequels, in my opinion. Okay, these are in no particular order. Please bear that in mind. So starting first up, we're just gonna go alphabetical, I guess, because that's how my folder is organized. 47 Meters Down, Uncaged. I really enjoyed the original of this, as cheesy as it is, and this one just took the cheese to like the next level. And this is one that I actually started rewatching the other day. This is one of those movies that it's technically bad, but I just get a craving to watch it sometimes, and I can't explain that phenomenon, but it just is what it is. This one is going to go in a choice. It was a choice to make the sequel the way that they did. I'm not a huge fan of this one, but I started rewatching it. I didn't finish it. Hate the ending. The ending is absolutely ridiculous. Next up, we have A Quiet Place Part 2. I might be in the minority here in thinking that this one is actually better than the first one. I don't know what it is. I think this one is just more packed with action that I really enjoy, and the horror in this is actually really good. The jump scares I'm actually a huge fan of. I just said actually so many times, I'm sorry. I want to put it in originals. I want to put it in originals. You know what? I'm unapologetic about my opinion. Quiet Place Part 2 should have been the original. Not really, obviously. That wouldn't make any sense, but my tiers don't make sense, so whatever. We're just going with that. I did hear about the prequel that they're making for A Quiet Place called Day One, which doesn't really make sense to me because in the second one, we got to see Day One. Granted, we didn't see much of it, so are we just gonna repeat that footage again? Like we've seen it, twice now. Are we gonna see it again? I'm just not sure about that. And apparently there's a spinoff coming too, so Quiet Place just is one of those movies that has to be a franchise, apparently. You know, I don't want to go in alphabetical order. We're gonna stop going in alphabetical order. Next up, we have Dr. Sleep. So this is, of course, a sequel to The Shining, and this one was a solid sequel. Should it just go in solid sequel? Be the first of that? I think it is. I think it's gonna go in solid sequel. This movie was so surprising to me how much I enjoyed it, because I went in with pretty low expectations. But it was actually phenomenal. I think it was so entertaining. Definitely some fan service in there, but I didn't mind it. I'm not the biggest fan of The Shining or anything. I don't mind The Shining, I guess. It's not my favorite. I own it. Maybe because I feel like I'm obligated to as a horror fan, but Dr. Sleep is really entertaining and a good sequel. Next up, we have Quarantine 2 Terminal. So this is one that takes place obviously in an air terminal, which I think is a great idea. I actually think this is the perfect setting for like a zombie movie, and honestly The Purge should have taken place in a terminal as well. I feel like that would have been really interesting. I just don't think there's enough like airplane or terminal horror movies, so this one did that, so I really like it for that. Not the best, it's not great compared to Quarantine. I think Quarantine is a fantastic movie. Obviously the original is great as well, Wreck. I don't think I've seen the Wreck sequels though, so if you like them, please let me know so I can check them out. I mean, this movie isn't that good. It's not that good. We're gonna put it in a choice. I recently bought it, but I don't know. It's like one of those fun, cheesy ones that you throw on, kind of like 47 Meters Down, I feel, so it's fine. It's fine. We're going with a choice. Next, we have Grave Encounters 2. This one's really fun because it's meta, it's self-aware. I mean, they're both pretty meta and self-aware in my opinion. The first one is obviously, though, fantastic, and this one is good. I'll put it in solid sequel. I like how they did the Blair Witch treatment on this one and made it kind of within its own universe. I think that's really fun when movies do that. It's not as good as the original, of course, not as scary in my opinion, but solid sequel. Next up, we have Blair Witch, Book of Shadows. This one is probably a little controversial because not everyone loves it. It's one of those that's, you know, taking a found footage movie and making the sequel not a found footage movie, which is a choice. And that is really the category that I would put this in if I were being a normal critic, if you will, but I'm not. I'm me. I am not a critic. So we're gonna put this where I think it deserves to go. A solid sequel. I love this movie. I know half of it at least is the nostalgia aspect of the early 2000s vibes of this movie. It is perfection in that sense, but it is more of a choice. Like, it is a choice. It's not necessarily the best on this list, but just because this is my personal list and I get to make the rules here, I'm putting it in solid sequel because I like it. So like I said, I do have some franchises. So this is Paranormal Activity 2. Again, I'm only picking the second one in the franchise for the franchises that I chose. Paranormal Activity 2 is actually my favorite Paranormal Activity movie. It is way scarier, way better story. There's more characters involved. It's going in originals. This could have been the first movie and it would have blown me away even more than the first one. When I saw this in theaters, it was one of the most fun experiences ever because it was so horrifying. One of the few to actually scare me in a theater. Next up, we have Open Water 2 Adrift. I think I've recently talked about this movie in a previous video. I'm not 100% sure. This one's good. Again, it's more on the cheesy side. So it takes a very serious type of true story film like Open Water and makes it cheesy. So there's a lot more characters. The concept of how they actually get trapped is really ridiculous. So it's going in a choice. I like this one. I like this movie, but it's a choice. It's not, you know, I don't love it or anything. It's good, but it was a choice to go to that route compared to the original. It just feels different. Next, you all know how I feel by now about Unfriended Dark Web. I am obsessed with the first one. I love Unfriended. I think it's one of the best modern movies, and I know I just always convince myself, like talk myself into thinking that more and more the more I talk about it on my channel. The first time I was like, it was really good, I liked it. And then now I just continuously talk about it and I'm like, no, it's one of the best modern horror movies ever made. I know, controversial opinion. Dark Web, however, is not. It is really bad. I really don't like this movie. I just realized I picked the French movie poster. That's okay. So this is gonna be the first of its category. I think they tried, so it's not a why try situation. I think it's just an no situation. Like, I think it was smart for them to try. Still don't think they could come close to the original because of how it was filmed. This movie lacked all of that. It lacked the horror elements. It lacked the believability of it. It was just did not even come close to the original. So that's my first no thank you. The Hills Have Eyes 2. I love the first one. I know it's surprising to a lot of people because of what's in it. I just fast forward. I fast forward the movies that I enjoy, like Last House on the Left, skip on through that. Same with Hills Have Eyes. Hills Have Eyes 2, very disturbing still, and I think this is a very underrated sequel because it follows the military. I find it to be really fascinating. I love the cave system. I love that we're going through their habitat, if you will. I just think it's great. I think it's a great sequel. So with that being said, it's going in solid sequel. Up next, we have Scream 2. Now, this is where I'm gonna lose some of you. I mean, if you've watched my Scream ranking, you know where this ranks to me. It's in last place. It's my least favorite Scream movie, the one I'm least excited to rewatch. When I do rewatch, I will say this has one of my favorite Scream opening intros of the whole franchise, so that it does have going for it. I hate the plot. I hate who Ghostface turns out to be. I'm just not a fan of that storyline at all. This one is going in a choice because they chose to go that route, man. That definitely, that was something to make that Ghostface and make that the story was not great. It's not terrible. I don't think any of the Scream movies are terrible, but it was a choice. Next, we have Creepshow 2, which is from the 80s. I believe this one was from the 80s, still in the 80s. Stephen King, George A. Romero, amazing combination. Creepshow 2 actually has my favorite short out of the entire Creepshow franchise, and that is The Raft. I think that one is just perfection. I absolutely love it. I love these short stories. They're just some of my favorite works from Stephen King and George A. Romero for that matter. I think I'm gonna put Creepshow 2 in originals because this could easily have been the first Creepshow and I still would have loved it just the same. If anything, I like Creepshow 2 a little bit more. Human Centipede 2. I never get a chance to talk about disturbing movies, so when I've seen some, I'm gonna talk about them. I've seen all of the Human Centipedes, believe it or not. I know that was back in the day when I thought I had to as a horror fan, and I'm here to remind you, you don't have to watch what you don't want to watch. You don't have to subject yourself to things that you don't want to see. This is obviously a one-time viewing for me. This is up there top 3 most disturbing movies I've ever seen, so no thank you. However, I understand the artistic choices in this. Again, it does the meta thing with the movies, making it's like movie within a movie. So I appreciate the artistic choices in this more so than other disturbing movies, and I understand why people like these movies. Do you like these movies? Can you like Human Centipede? I'm actually not going to rate it super low. It's going in a choice. It was a choice. They pushed it way farther than the first one. I don't think the first one's actually that bad. I know that's weird for me to say because I'm not a huge fan of disturbing stuff. I don't think it's that disturbing, to be honest. The second one, though, they went there. They really pushed the boundaries. I would never watch it again. I'm not going to put it in Why Try because of course they're gonna try to top the first one. Isn't that how it went anyway? They were like, people said the first one wasn't that disturbing and they were like, oh, I'll give you disturbing. And then they gave us a second one and it was like, you. But I also don't think it's like a terrible sequel. Again, it has some meta aspects. It's like, I don't know, some artistic choices. So it's not the worst sequel. I would never watch it again, but I'm gonna put it there, and I bet that surprised you. Surprised myself, honestly. Did not anticipate putting it there. Next up, we have The Conjuring 2. I love this movie, actually. This is my favorite Conjuring movie of the whole franchise, so I know exactly where you were going. Originals. I just think it's the best Conjuring movie. I mean, there's really nothing else to expand upon that. I think it's scarier. I absolutely love it. Final Destination 2. Great. It used to be my favorite of the franchise, but the third one is now my favorite, of course, as you would probably know if you've been around a while. Solid sequel. Don't really have any complaints about FD2. I think it's great sequel. Ouija, Origin of Evil. This one is so fantastic. It's by Mike Flanagan, and no one really acknowledges that this is one of his best works. Obviously, Haunting of Hill House to me is his best work, but I swear, Ouija, Origin of Evil, he's done some really good projects that people don't acknowledge that are actually his, and they just write it off. So this is obviously a sequel to Ouija, which was terrible. But this one is actually really fantastic. I'm going to put it in originals because if that was the original, it could have been a great franchise and a trilogy, I bet. I wish he had partaken in the first one or something because he did amazing things with the sequel. Don't Breathe 2. This is the worst sequel probably in this whole video. I want to put it in Why Try, but I don't even like the first one that much. Again, this could go in any of the bottom 3. It was a choice. It was a choice to make him the hero. That's right. I cannot even with this movie. It is so bad. It would have been fine if the first one didn't exist. It's the fact that now we are rooting for this man in a way. The story was not bad. The movie itself was not terrible. It was the fact that it was a sequel to Don't Breathe that made it horrible. So we're putting it in no. That is like one of the worst sequels I've ever seen. Last Exorcism Part 2. I don't even know why I have a 4th category of Why Try. We're not putting anything in there, apparently. Okay, so this movie, again, is one of those where they take a found footage movie and make the sequel not in found footage, and I'm not a huge fan of that, to be honest. They did that with Book of Shadows, of course, and I like that sequel, but I think it has to do with the nostalgia aspect of it. It's not fantastic. It's just one of those cheesy movies that are great atmospheres, so I think that's why. This one, however, is not great. I only have sentimental reasons for liking this movie and owning it. It's going in a choice. It's a choice. A choice to make the movie this way and make it not found footage. It makes it so bizarre. I just don't understand their choices in like making this movie. It's just not good. Saw 2. So I think Saw 3 and Saw 2 are kind of tied for me for my favorites in the franchise. However, nothing's going to come close to the original, in my opinion. I mean, I love my personal favorites are 2 and 3, but the original is so good that it can't be topped. So we're putting this in solid sequel. This tier list is not looking that pretty, so sorry we're not being very aesthetic today. It Chapter 2. Again, unpopular opinion. I love this one probably more than the first one. I don't know. Maybe it's just me. I know so many people have issues with this movie and I don't understand it. They say the CGI is really bad. I understand the ending is pretty lame, but everything else is really good in my opinion. I think it's really, it's good. It's a good sequel. In fact, it's a solid sequel. So we're putting it there. The Ring 2. I actually love this movie, obviously, you knew that, but I don't think it's like a fantastic sequel. I understand why they made it, but it's not great. I am going to put it in solid sequel because I do think it is a solid sequel. Obviously, I own it, I rewatch it, it's really fun, but it is a little bit more on the cheesy end, so it's not fantastic. Next, this is another one I'm gonna lose a lot of you in. Halloween Kills. I love Halloween Kills. I have no shame in saying that I love the new trilogy and where it's going. People hate on these movies so much, and you have to be fans of the original because I'm not a huge fan of the original. I mean, I like it, I enjoy it. It's one of my favorite like classic films, but these new ones are so fun to me. This has the highest body count in any of the Halloween movies. Like, how can you not like this movie? At least enjoy it, like have a fun time with it. I know Evil Dies Tonight gets a little repetitive. Also, I guess the new Halloween is also a sequel, right? Technically, we're running out of space. Solid sequel. That's just where it deserves to go. What am I gonna put in Why Try? I think I know one that's gonna go in there. Oh, this is the one I was talking about. Why are we making this? I like it, but no one else does. This movie's pretty bad, I'm not gonna lie. I enjoy it. It's cheesy, it's technically bad, and that's gonna be the first one we're gonna put in Why Try. You can't come close to the first one, and I know it's not everyone's favorite. I love the first one so much. I'm obsessed with Silent Hill anything. I love that franchise, but Revelation just doesn't make sense as a sequel. Does not. The Descent Part 2. Another choice. This is another one that probably should go in a choice, but I'm going to mix it up and put it in why try as well. The first one is so fantastic, a near perfect film in my opinion, and the sequel makes no sense. Again, like I said, it was a choice. I'm not going to spoil anything, but why are we doing that? Why is that the storyline of the sequel? Makes no sense how it pans out. Like, that would never happen in a million years. I just recently read a book that's very similar in story to this, and I'm like, that would never happen. That would never happen in reality, so it makes it so much less believable. Not that the first one's super believable with the cave people, but like still, it has some believability, realistic factors in it. This one is just, why? This is another one. And we're just filling up this category all of a sudden. Woman in Black 2, Angel of Death. Not sure about this one. Again, I know exactly where this is going. Why try? Why would you make a sequel to the original and make it like that? They're not even similar to the first one. Like, hardly any homages. Like, it doesn't make any sense in the story. So like, what? I can't with that sequel. I own it too, and I have no idea where I got it. I've owned it for like years, and I'm like, where did this come from? A PR box or something? Because I don't like this movie. But because I'm a collector, I don't get rid of it. Okay, next up, this is a franchise that a lot of you love. I'm not a huge fan of this. I just not a huge fan of horror comedies or dark comedies. They're just not my favorite, and these are so cheesy to me that I just cannot get behind them. I just can't. I can't get into them. I saw this one in theaters. It was way more ridiculous and over the top than the first one. This is one I don't know where to put. I'm not sure where to put. You know, it's my list. I know where I'm gonna put it. It's going in no. It's just not my franchise. I know, that's gonna hurt a lot of you. And it should not be next to Don't Breathe 2 and Dark Web. But in my opinion, it does belong there. It's just, I'm not a huge fan of these movies. Next, we have Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2. This is one of my favorite sequels. I love this movie because of the comedic aspect. This movie is so fun, as you can see by the cover. It's so fun. It's just a comedy gold in the best way, not in a Happy Death Day way. You know what I mean? This is one of those rare instances where I genuinely like the tone shift from the original. And as you know, the original is one of my favorite movies of all time. And this movie is not super well loved, but I think it's just such a fun time. I really enjoy the sequel. It's just so ridiculous and over the top. So solid sequel. Is that going to be the last one? Hopefully, because I'm out of space. We only have a couple more left anyway. Next we have Creep 2. Not great. Not a huge fan of Creep 2, to be honest. I love Mark Duplass. I think Creep, the first one, is amazing and such a great modern horror movie. This one I wish they hadn't made. And there's one category where those go, and it's why try. It's not terrible. It's not the worst one in the why tries. I don't think it's as bad as the other ones that are in there. Same with Descent 2. It's not that bad, but why would you even bother when the first one is like perfection? You know what I mean? Like, the first one is perfect, all 4 of those. Why would you try to touch it? You're not gonna come close. Oh, this next one. Sinister II. It's so bad. I love the first one, of course. I think it's one of the scariest movies. I think scientifically it is one of the scariest movies ever made. I recently saw that Host from Shudder that came out during the pandemic is now ahead of Sinister as the scariest movie. I'm not sure about that. I'm not here to question anyone who finds Host scary, but compared to Sinister, is that what we're going with? It's really scarier. Okay. But Sinister 2 is terrible. That one's going in, no. For one, they shouldn't have tried. I get why they did, so it's not going in why try, but it's bad. It's just a bad sequel. I don't think it's as scary. I have seen a lot of you request me to rank the tapes in Sinister, like the different death tapes, if you will. Let me know if that sounds interesting. I'm not sure what kind of format that would be in. I guess from worst to best, my favorites to least favorites, I don't really know. But I've gotten a lot of requests for that, so let me know. All right, this is the last horror sequel. Are you ready? Cabin Fever 2 Spring Fever. I like this one, but I know exactly where I'm gonna put this. This is a great sequel, but it's going in a choice. They pushed it. Do you think Cabin Fever for the first one's bad or like gross? This one makes the first one look like a children's movie. It's so nasty. It's so disgusting, but if you want body horror, that's a good one. It's also a teen horror, which I really enjoy. They really pushed it and maybe a little bit too far. I like it, but I can only watch it like once every 5 years because it's just a lot. So there you have my tier list for these 30 horror sequels. Now, of course, I left off so many. So if you want to comment your favorite horror sequels or comment other sequels I missed that you want me to rank, maybe we'll do a part 2 sometime in the future. I did see Spooky Astronauts also do a tier list ranking horror remakes, and that has also been on my list for a long time. So I will also be doing a tier list for horror remakes as well because I really want to see how hers and mine compare. I guarantee we're gonna have very different opinions for some of them. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video and I will talk to you soon. Bye.